Okay, guys, very welcome back to the show. I've got a very special guest on the show today, a man that you may recognize from your screens in WCW, Mr. Alex Wright. How are you doing today, man?
Very good. How about you?
Very good. Look, pleasure to have you on. A lot of people like to hear from you, and when I always ask people, "Oh, who will I try to get on next?" You come up a good bit as well. So, really appreciate you taking the time out today, man.
Well, thank you for your interest and thanks for having me. I
No
was really
problem.
looking forward to the interview today.
Yeah. So look, we'll go back to the beginning anyway, because obviously you're second generation wrestler. So I just kind of want to know about the impact that your dad had on you by going into the business at such a young age. Was it something that you always wanted to do?
Well, first of all, I have to say my dad was always my role model. He was my idol. He was just such a great dad and such a good trainer, and of course, a great pro wrestler. And I always wanted to step in his footsteps. There was never a doubt in my mind that I'm going to be a pro wrestler one day. And there was never like I said, a question in my head which way I gonna go in my life. I
Mm.
always was set in my brain that I'm gonna be a pro wrestler one day, and I never was forced to do this sport by my dad. He always said, "Hey, you can do whatever you want." And but the best playground for me as a child and as a little baby was the wrestling ring. I grew up on the road, so I was right beside the arena or right beside the tent. And every morning or every time, free time we had, I went with my dad in the ring and, we played around, just had fun. And basically, it never felt to me like it was training. It's just playing around.
Yeah.
And when I got older, then of course you started training me when I was like 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. Then it got more into a training, but it never felt to me like a training because I loved it. I like sports, and I especially liked pro wrestling. Also, in my youth, I did a lot of amateur wrestling, submission wrestling. I did weightlifting. I did competition swimming. So I was always into sports, and yeah, my dad had a really big impact in my life. Um, and I'm a second generation wrestler, like you said. So I traveled around, basically around Europe, all
Yeah.
over, around the world. I mean, I went with him to Canada. He wrestled for Stu Howard. He wrestled in the States for Vern Gagne before they had the before WWF was the monopoly.
Yeah.
Uh, they had still the territories at that time. And then, of course, he wrestled all over the world for New Japan and stuff like that. So he had a lot of knowledge about all the different styles, and that's what he taught me.
Mm.
And he always said, "Hey, listen, kid, if you want to be a pro wrestler, you have to respect the sport, you have to respect the veterans and your colleagues, and of course, you have to respect the fans because without fans, we don't, we don't have any fun stepping in the ring, and we don't make any money." So that was the first things I really remembered, which was very important to me. And
Yeah.
of course, my uncle Bernard Wright, he was a pro wrestler internationally, very successful, just like my dad. I mean, my dad was a 16 times middleweight CWA champion. CWA was Catch Wrestling Association, the biggest European wrestling company at that time. Just so that you understand, in '94 they still sold out the city hall, the arena in Bremen, which holds 15,000 spectators, and that
Wow.
was a European promotion without TV. Okay,
Mm.
and yeah, so my dad had multiple other titles and was very successful. Like I said, he wrestled in New Japan many years. He wrestled for the big companies in Mexico, and yeah, I'm very proud of my dad, and I always try to have the same how do you say physiology?
Philosophy.
Pardon me?
The same philosophy.
Yes, exactly. It's a hard word for me. I haven't talked English for a while, and uh, like him. And yeah, and then with 16, I had my first professional match in Wuppertal, Germany. I was one of the youngest pro wrestlers in Europe and worldwide.
Was that for your dad's? Was your dad involved in the promoting of that fight then for the first match?
No, that was actually for the company CWA,
Okay.
which my dad wrestled also. And I mean, many big names wrestled for CWA. I mean, Fit Finlay, William Regal, Lance Storm, Hiro Yamamoto, Justin Thunder Liger, Terry Funk, Vader. I mean, JBL. You know, at that Scott Hall. They all worked for CWA, and of course that was a very big moment in my life. I mean, I trained my whole life for this moment. Actually, I skipped my work. I had an apprenticeship as a insurance broker because my dad told me, listen, you won't start in this business without having a job where you can fall back to when you're, for instance, get hurt or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I skipped work and I went to that show. Of course, I was very nervous because the thing is, I knew my dad taught me a lot at that point in my life. But on the other hand, I wanted to make my dad proud. And of course, the expectation of all the other wrestlers, you know, everybody was standing on the curtain when I did my entrance, when I had my match. I mean, it was high pressure, you know, I didn't want to, yeah, I want to do good at that time. But it went well and they were satisfied and everybody was happy. And they signed me for a 1-year contract. So I started out then my business. And information on the side, the foster father of my dad, who grew him up, Mr. Ted Badley, he also was a promoter, a wrestler, and he also had a wrestling school. He taught the British Bulldogs how to wrestle.
Okay.
So I come from one of the few wrestling families.
Yeah, so there was no way that you were not getting involved in this business. So starting off early, then did you base yourself mostly in Germany? Because I know you went to Japan for a while as well.
Well, at first, like I said, I had a contract with CWA, but since I was a very young wrestler, and that was very untypical, especially in Germany, I got a lot of media attention, and I was invited to a lot of talk shows, radio shows, TV shows, and it was a very big show over here, a talk show called Schreinemakers Live, and they invited me to the topic of wrestling. And the first time I was there when I was like 16, and the second time I was almost 18. And on the second time, they had Johnny B. Bad and Sting from WCW at the show, because WCW was running a German tour at that time.
Yes.
And they were promoting their show. And I met those two guys, and I also met the PR manager, Alan Sharp, and they invited me to come to Munich in Germany. And my dad, being long time in the business, he said, hey, listen, kid, you better take your wrestling gear because you never know what's going to happen. So, of course, I did. And I showed up at the venue. And the first thing they asked me, hey, do you have your stuff with you? I said, why? One of our guys is injured, so you need to take his place. So Booker at that time was Ric Flair. And that made me really nervous, because that's a chance of a lifetime, maybe, you know, first impression counts. And I had my first match with Paul Roma, was very good. They really liked it. And Rick came afterwards, after the match, to me and said, hey, listen, do you want to finish the tour with us? I said, okay, of course, it's an honor, you know, a great chance. And the second night I had a match against Swedish or Danish, what was this? Olympic amateur wrestling guy. And this match was also doing very well, because I had background in amateur wrestling, so I could adapt to his style more. And after that match, they were even more happier that I had a good match with that guy.
Yeah.
And I was there for, I think, like 7 or 8 nights wrestling. And the last night, Eric Bischoff was flown into, I think, Hamburg. And Rick said I should come to the hotel room, and was Eric Bischoff and Ric Flair. And they said, hey, listen, kid, we want to offer you a contract. And I had to decide. I had 1 week time to decide if I want to take this chance or not. And of course I did. And then I moved over to the States at the age of 18.
It all happened so fast for you. Like when you put it into perspective, would you have taken your gear to the arena that night if it wasn't for your dad?
Probably not, because I'm a young kid. I don't I don't see the big picture, and all the consequences of your handling. So that's probably one of the most important moments in my life, taking my wrestling gear.
Yeah, I was talking to had an amateur ring announcer on my podcast last year, amateur independent ring announcer, and he says that he packs his tuxedo because that's why he wears to the ring. He brings it everywhere with him. He leaves it in his car just in case.
Yeah, always be ready for your chance, right? That's
Yeah,
what that's what I tell my students. Always be ready for your chance. You never know when it comes around.
Yeah. So at that age, then I'd imagine it was kind of difficult, maybe leaving everything at home and moving to America. Did you have any problems in that regard, making such a big jump, or were you just looking at the bigger picture?
Well, I always was a very focused guy. I always knew my goal and stuff like that. But since my family is very close, we have a very good relationship. It was very hard. I had a younger brother, and of course everybody else in my family. It was a hard decision. Plus, I was at that age, I was engaged also, so I had to leave my fiancée. And but that's life. You have to take your chance, And the first 9 months in the States were very, very tough because long distance relationship with your fiancé, that was hard at that young age, especially. When you're that young, you're not that secure. In relationships, you're more like, she maybe meeting some other guys or stuff like that. It was hard. And plus missing my family, my dad, my mother, my grandma, and all those people, my brother. So it was a hard time. On the other hand, it was very tough time to get accepted and respected in the locker room, because in the States, you're an adult at the age of 21. I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
Then I was a foreigner. Plus I was German, that's not very good things, And I'm half English, but they saw me as a German, And the 9 months, the first 9 months, they didn't pay me. So I had to get a few other jobs like bouncer and, running errands for people and stuff like that. And they put me down in the power plant, which was the wrestling school from WCW. That's what they always do if they don't know how to use you on the show, if there's not a spot free, because they didn't really, couldn't teach me anything there. I knew all the different styles from my dad. He taught me the European style, which is very technical, the Japanese style, which is very technical, Mexican high flying stuff and stuff like that, and also the American style. So there was not that much they taught me, but it still was good to stay in shape and meet all the boys at the school. Very nice guys down there. But the school tried to, was kind of a little bit too out to break your will, and see what kind of,
try to really test you.
Yeah, would have. Yeah, okay. And anyway, for instance, they had me running the ropes like I don't know, 5 to 8 hours a day with steel ropes, So my back was swollen like that, but you had to continue, It's just, if you would stop, you would lose your respect to them. But anyway, I stayed there, and then since they didn't pay me, and since my what's the word? Since I didn't make enough money for the living over there, I made a lot of how you say debt. What's the word?
Debt. Yeah.
Debt. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one day I said, okay, that's enough. So I went to the CNN building, and I had no appointment. I rushed to Eric's office without the appointment and said, hey, listen, Eric, you're gonna pay me now, or I'm gonna leave back to Germany, because losing money I can do back home also. From that moment, they started paying me, and they put me on the show, which was good because I could show my talent, and I could show the locker room, all the veterans, hey, listen, I'm a young kid, but I respect the sport, I respect the veterans, and I'm here to learn, and I want to do my best. And but it was still tough because the money they paid me wasn't enough to cover the expenses on the road and the apartment. So the first 9 months I was like sleeping on the floor of the hotel rooms from my colleagues. I just ate one time a day and stuff like that just to save money, But after a while, I got accepted and respected by my colleagues, and then the office saw my work and they started paying me more, and it got better and better and better.
Yeah. I have a picture here, like, of one of my first memories of seeing you on TV was Triple H back
Triple
before
H,
he was.
exactly.
I can't even. Yeah, that was his name back then. But he was pretty. Like, you were probably in a situation where you were more experienced than him going into match. Would that be fair to say, into that match?
I don't know about that. I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't say that because I don't know exactly his background, what it was at that time. I know we started out at about the same time in WCW, and I really enjoyed working him. I mean, he's a good talent, but I always felt secure in the ring since my dad taught me all that stuff. I never felt nervous about, oh my God, can I keep up with that guy, or can I keep up with that guy? That was never a problem for me.
Have you ever talked to Triple H over the years, from being like, I know he keeps an eye on wrestling here in Europe through NXT, and he wants to start up NXT Europe and things like that. Have you ever had a conversation with him since then?
Well, I was, they invited me one time as a guest trainer to their performance center.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I talked to him at that time, and a lot of times before I talked to the head coaches of the performance center and the managing guy who was the boss from the performance center, because they were always asking me about which guy in Germany is good, who we could use and stuff like that. So I was in contact with them all the time. Yeah. I mean, I brought one of my students over there. He's now on SmackDown, Fabian Eichner.
Okay, yeah. And what did you make of the facilities over there?
For a sec. Hold on for a sec. Oh, hold on for a sec.
Yep.
Okay. Excuse me.
Yeah, what did you make of the facilities over there then in the performance center compared to what you've seen before?
Compared to WCW or compared to my school, or
yeah, compared to any schools that you've been?
Well, I've been to WCW school and I've been to my school, of course, and of course they have a big place. I think they have like 5 or 7 rings. Mm-hmm. They have they have nice locker rooms, and everything is nice, very professional. They have like a fitness studio in there, and they have physical therapists and all kind of stuff. Yeah, you see, there's a lot of money in that place.
Yeah, it's like Hollywood.
Of course, they have a lot of good trainers there, like Terry Taylor, Regal was there for a time, or David Taylor, Finley. Norman Smiley, Di Malenko, such guys. They were all. Now I think Shawn Michaels is having, so they have a lot of knowledge power down there. So anybody who trains there is safe to learn a lot about the business and a lot about the sport and about matches and stuff like that. So very professional. I really enjoyed my time there.
Yeah. If they were to ask you to go over and be a trainer over there, would that be something that you do? Or are you just comfortable with your own place now in Germany?
Well, I'm very comfortable with my place, and I have a lot of students which put their hopes in my abilities to help them into sport. They have a lot of dreams, and I'm not a guy who plays around with all people's dreams. So I take this very, very seriously. Wrestling runs just in my blood, and I love wrestling, and I have a lot of passion for that sport. That's what I try to teach my students, and also which I put into my students. And but of course, if they offer me a job as a performance trainer, which would fit into my schedule, then of course I would take it, because it would be an honor. And I definitely miss the States. It's a great country, great people, and it was one of my best times in my life. So I wouldn't say no, of course.
Yeah. If you're looking, we'll talk about your school now for a moment, and we'll just say, after the last couple of years, I don't know, the pandemic and stuff like that, how much did that affect what you were trying to do? And I've noticed in Ireland anyway, since, everything has been lifted and there's no restrictions and everything, there seems to be a big, massive hunger for wrestling again. Are you finding that over there?
Yeah, definitely. There's a big, massive hunger for wrestling and wrestling training. I mean, like I said, I'm fully booked until next year, April, something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of interest, and but it was a hard time for everybody, for the promotions, also for my school. The government shut my school down for 1 year. So making no money 1 year, it's pretty tough. And
how did you fill your time?
Pardon me?
How did you fill your time? What did you do when the school was closed?
Well, I did a lot of training. Then I was basically teaching my son the school stuff, because the kids weren't allowed to go to school. So I was doing the homeschooling with him. Plus, I wrote a book for children. So that's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to tell me about the book?
Pardon me?
Do you want to tell me about the book for children? That's interesting.
No, not yet. It's
no,
not
okay.
released yet.
It's not done yet.
It's about to be released. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it's something maybe we can revisit then and talk about.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. The persona from your initial entrance onto the television screens in WCW, obviously everyone remembers the dancing, the music. How did that persona came about? Did you have any input into that, or was this completely different to how you had been both on the independents and initially starting over in there?
Well, as a wrestler, it's always important to be different, to have an individual style, wrestling style, and closing style, and entrance. The more you separate yourself from all the other wrestlers, the more you will be in the memory of the fans. And also, it's very important for a wrestler to, in every successful wrestler, there's something from his real persona in his gimmick, and the techno dancing, actually I did in dance clubs. I used to dance in dance clubs in Germany, because at that time when I was young, like 16, 15 and stuff like that, it was really getting really huge, that kind of music, techno, techno parties and all kinds of stuff. So I was dancing a lot like that, and I was wearing the clothes and stuff. So when I moved to the States, I still listened to the stuff. And one time at a show, we went to a dance clubs, a few wrestlers and some people from the office. And in the States, it just started out this kind of music, techno.
Yeah.
And of course, I danced like that there also. And then some of the the office people came to me and said, "Hey, listen, hey, what are you doing there? It's different, it's unique. Why don't you do that right before your in your entrance?" I said, "No, I don't want to do that. It's I'm a wrestler. I don't want to do that." "No, no, do it. It's entertaining and stuff like that." And well, then I did it. There are two sides on that thing. It made me really famous very quick.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people recognized me really fast, and that was good. It was entertaining. That was good. But on the other hand, some of the fans, especially the smart marks, they had a hard time looking past the dancing, looking at my wrestling abilities.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
being accepted in that way, that was for me much more important. My wrestling abilities. I'm very proud of my wrestling family and what I do in the ring. So that was always I was always split apart if I liked dancing or not. But it definitely made me very famous, and to that day I still have a lot of fans in the States and around the world, and they remember me because of the dance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And usually TV business is very fast paced, so if you have a generic gimmick, you could be 2 or 3 years on TV, and then you're off TV for half a year, and people don't know you even more. So
Yeah.
that's a very good thing about the dance.
In terms of gimmicks, do you find that the gimmicks these days aren't really as good as they were in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s? Like, I find that a lot of guys are kind of coming out now, especially on WWE, maybe as themselves and the same kind of black clothes and normal music. And
That's true.
it's all,
That's just my opinion. It was
yeah.
much better back in the days
Mm.
because wrestling was bigger than life.
Yes.
It was not the regular life. So as a spectator, I was put into a different life in a different world. Nowadays, everything is so raw, realistic. Everybody is like the normal street guy and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not MMA. In my opinion, it's wrestling, and wrestling lives from different looks, different styles, different attitudes, colorful, over the edge and stuff like that. But that's like I enjoyed it back then much more. You had guys like the Nasty Boys, Road Warriors, Undertaker,
Yeah.
Sting and stuff like that. So much more interesting, like superheroes.
Larger than life. Yeah.
Yeah.
One guy you had a lot of good matches with was Chris Jericho. When you look at him, first of all, what's he like? And then second of all, can you believe like the guy is still doing it kind of at the top of the game in AEW? Like it's crazy, isn't it? That he's still there at
Well,
that level.
first of all, he's a great guy, really fun to hang out with, and I really respected that he's still performing at this level at that age. I mean, he must be now, what's he, 54, something like that, maybe 55.
Could be even more. I'll check it here now, but he is.
Yeah, I think he was like 6 years older than me.
Okay, he's
Five,
52. He's 52.
52. Yeah, see. I mean,
But
that's
still,
great. He looks great. He had a phenomenal career. So yeah, I'm happy for him.
yeah. Would he be one of your favorite opponents in WCW, or would you have any favorite opponents that you look back on?
Yeah, he was one of my favorite opponents. All guys who like that technical style and the high flying, and which put more focus on the sport wrestling, like competitive wrestling. Like I really enjoyed working Eddie Guerrero, Di Malenko, Chavo Guerrero, Kidman, all the Mexicans like Ray and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that kind of style. But I also really enjoyed working with Flair or Arn Anderson. I mean, I remember
Yeah.
I had a pay-per-view match against Arn Anderson. I think it was '95. We just went out there and did the match. It was without talking anything beforehand or whatever. It was really fun to work with him. And I
You
learned
just
that every time I stepped in the ring with those guys, of course, I learned more and more because I was the youngest in the whole company for a long time. I mean, most of the guys were like 30, mid 30. After a while, younger people came in.
yeah. Was it a case then when you were going out for a match with someone like Arn Anderson that you would just maybe have a discussion and say, this is the finish and that's it, and just go out and wrestle?
That's how we handled it, yes.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
was fun because you felt safe. You didn't get nervous because, oh my God, I gonna forget this or whatever. And especially, I think if you do it that way, you can exactly perform what the audience needs
Mm-hmm.
because our audience is always different. South of the states is different to north of the states. Japan audience is different to the German audience, and the same is also when what day of the week you wrestle. If you wrestle during the week or on a Saturday people are much more relaxed and much more into having fun at a venue.
Yeah.
So if you always plan in front of your match the whole match, then you can't adapt to the audience what they need in what moment. So
Yeah.
it doesn't make
I,
sense
I,
to me.
I had Steve Kern on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling me that, when he was on Raw for a while, going through some of the women's matches, and he called two of the ladies aside. He didn't mention them by name. And he said, right, figure out your match, because he let them have the power. He didn't want to write the whole match. And he said he came back 4 hours later and they still hadn't come up with the match. And he was like, for fuck's sake, it's 6 minutes.
Great. Was it a
Yeah.
good match then?
He never said. He's a very nice guy as well. And I think he was involved in the training for a long time down there as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Um
yeah, no, it's better to
I think
trust your abilities and
it's too scripted almost these days when from what I hear, like, I don't know, I'm not in the business, but I hear like every move is planned, and it's
well, I wouldn't know right now how they handle it in WCW or AEW or whatever, because I'm out of that game for a long time now. But
yeah,
I teach my students the way my father taught me, and I know if my students wrestle somewhere around the world, they have no problem keeping up with anybody. They can feel secure and they will be safe.
yeah,
So that's the most important thing. So, and for every uh, wrestling interested guy out there or girl out there, it's very important for your career that you can wrestle like that, because then you're independent.
mhm,
You can, if a company treats you not good, you just say, well, listen, then I go to a different company. So it's very important to know how to wrestle like a face, like a heel, and have your own repertoire. That's very important. Then you're not dependent to a company, so you're independent and you can say at any time, hey, listen, I don't like that what you're doing with me. I'm very self-secure in my abilities. I will talk to this company or to this company.
is there anyone that you really wanted to wrestle but never got the chance to?
Yeah, a few guys. Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, The Rock. Those would be favorites of mine, which I never wrestled.
Did you get to wrestle Steve Austin, because you guys were in WCW
Yeah,
together at one point?
many
You got
times,
to
yes.
wrestle. Yeah.
Stone Cold, yeah, yeah, I did wrestle.
Stunning Steve Austin. What was he like?
Exactly, yeah. A great wrestler, of course, unbelievable charisma, and tough guy. I mean, he knew his abilities, which I just said. He didn't like it at WCW, so he went to ECW, and then he went to WWE and became Stone Cold.
Yeah, became one of the biggest wrestlers of all
Draws,
time.
yeah, yeah,
Crazy,
yeah.
crazy stuff. WCW, obviously, while you were there, kind of evolved over time, and people like Vince Russo and came in, and then the writing was on the wall. The company was going to be sold. What was the biggest difference you found from when you walked through the door to when you left?
When I started with WCW, they had about 25 wrestlers under contract. When WC closed, they had like 250 wrestlers under contract. I mean, there were many wrestlers which made a lot of money and they never were working. They were just sitting at home. That was not very good for the backstage morale.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next thing, the backstage morale was literally shits because everybody was afraid of losing their jobs and they didn't know how it's going to be in the future and where they're going to wrestle and if the company still exists and stuff like that. So that was a hard time. Plus, when I have a lot of respect for Eric Bischoff because he gave me my chance over there and Ric Flair and stuff. He was a smart business guy. And he was always correct to me, fair. And of course, I had my discussions with him and stuff like that, but he always was a good guy. But when Vince Russo came in, looking just at the professional side, I don't know him from personal side, so I don't want to talk about his personal side. Just from the professional side, in my opinion, he is one of the reasons why WCW was sold to WWE. I mean, he was booking for and writing the show for a WWE audience, and we did not have the WWE audience. We had WCW audience, and then he made stupid things like, we're not allowed to do certain things in the match, which is very important for the ring psychology. And they just said, no, we're not allowed to do that. And other things like the heavyweight title he gave to David Arquette, stuff like that. That's just stupid stuff. And of course, all the guys in the locker room were not very happy about that.
Yeah. Were you there that night when that happened?
I really can't recall. Probably. I was most of the times there, yeah.
I'm guessing if you were to try and think about what he was thinking, he was probably thinking about the story or the actor and the glitz and the glamour, but it really backfired because the wrestling fans have never forgiven him for that moment, have they?
Well, that's understandable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's such the biggest belt with, people like Flair and Sting and Hogan and all kind of guys, held that belt and now, yeah, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah. What was Hulk Hogan like backstage?
Well, I just can tell it how he behaved to me, and he was a very, very nice, calm, professional guy. I can't say anything bad about him.
Yeah. Do you think he had much kind of power there, or people always
say
say
of course he had a lot of power backstage,
Yeah.
And but he always said hello and was nice, and I mean, he was one of the biggest stars, and he still walked around like a normal guy, He was I would say humble. I mean, he knew who he was, but of course, but there were other guys which came backstage. Some guys of the veterans, they had their nose up in the air and they didn't say hello to anybody. Yeah, so it's always about personal character, I guess.
Yeah, and these guys were nowhere near as famous as Hulk Hogan, and they thought they were.
Exactly. So
yeah, now you get them in every walk of life.
Yeah, that's true.
I have Finlay down here because I was watching the previous episode. I looked up a few of your interviews, and you said that the two toughest men that you know are your dad and Finlay. So do you want to tell us about Finlay and what you learned from him?
First of all, that's true what you said. And I had, I think, my third match in Hanover against Finlay, and during the match he knocked me out. And I
gained your respect.
I went to my corner, and because they still had a round system, at that time. And I said, my dad was in my corner. And I said, Dad, I was just knocked out. And then my dad said, not anymore. Keep wrestling. You know, he's just, yeah, no, he was very tough. I mean, he was a solid working guy, very tough, and great heel.
Yeah. Now, we have to talk about this because, you know, every interview that Alex Wright does, they want to know about Paul Roma, the Paul Roma stuff and all that. Now, I've had Paul on my show now 3 times because a good friend of Paul's, Mario Mancini, does a podcast on my show. And then Paul came on my show last year to talk about, well, he was actually challenging Ric Flair because remember Ric Flair came in and done the Ric Flair last match.
Yeah, I know.
I remember when he passed out and everything like
Yeah,
that. Paul
yeah,
Roma
yeah.
was like,
I
"Oh,
remember,
Rick."
yeah.
Paul was like, "Well, Rick, you don't like me. You thought I shouldn't be a horseman. Rick, you fight me." And he called Rick out. Rick didn't respond to it anyway. But a couple of questions came in about that match with you guys, and then I seen that the Wrestling Bios channel done a segment maybe a few months back. I think it's got like 500,000 views or something of you guys match and them talking about it. And they used some of my footage for what Paul said about it, but he said that you guys are cool now. I have a little clip here that I can show you.
Sure.
Put it in.
Personal against him. That would have been with anybody because of the agreement that we had. It was personal with Flair against me because he knew the deal, you know, and I didn't have time to talk to the office and say, hey, what's going on? You know, this came out of his mouth. Whether that was true or not, I don't know to this day. And I rightly don't care. I did what I did. I don't regret what I did because it wasn't personal. So I don't regret it. You follow?
Yeah.
Again, Alex is I think he's a great guy. He was a great kid at the time. I spoke to him since. And you know, again, I think we parted. We came to an understanding, to an agreement that everything is cool between us. But again,
that's pretty much the gist of it. That's pretty much what he said anyway. But what I'd like to know is, like, without going into the old details of the match and everything that you've spoken about before, what agreement did you guys come to? Did he call you about things over the years, or where do you guys stand now? Like,
We talked a few times on the social networks, and we're fine. I mean, I understand his position. You're looking back from his side, you know. But he was a great talent and great wrestler, and he could have been much more in that business. And I think he did the wrong decision in doing that behavior, what he did that night. I mean, it was not very professional. I understand he was pissed at the office or pissed at Ric Flair. I don't know what they had for disagreements there, but
he said the agreement. He said that the agreement was that he was to lose to you on house shows, but not on the pay-per-view. That's what he told me.
Okay. Well, the thing is, in this sport, especially as a heel, you lose many times. You lose more matches in your career most of the times than you win matches. And if you are so focused on, oh, do I have the victory or am I losing? Then you're never going to be happy in this sport. You actually have to see it. What kind of match do I present the fan? How can I make them happy? You know, let's do the best we can do in the ring. And then if you separate yourself from that thinking, oh, I'm gonna win and I'm gonna lose or whatever, then you're much happier in that sport. Yeah, I understand, Paul. Nobody loses. How you say in English? Gerne. Everybody doesn't want to lose, of course.
Yeah.
But that's sport entertainment, okay? And I think if he would have sat back and thought a little bit about it, then he would knew that we both could have a great match, because we had a great match in Germany, the first match on the house show and on the German tour. The fans would have been happy, And the company would have said, hey, listen, that guy is reliable. We can trust him, and we will give him an even bigger push, and he would have been an even bigger star than he was already. Okay, so I think he did the wrong decision that night.
Paul said to me on the show that he thinks it's a very good match, that one on the TV.
The pay-per-view match.
Yeah.
Well, it was not a bad match, but I could have showed much more, and he didn't use my abilities. And of course, it's very easy to take advantage of a guy who's 18 years old and is respecting the veterans and respecting the sport and doesn't want to lose his job in a big company. Okay. I mean, I believe him. It was not personal. I understand all that. I understand him, don't get me wrong, but I still think it's sad that the sport lost a talent like Paul because of the behavior at that night. Because if we would have had a good match or an even better match, because the office knows what the abilities from us both was at that time, all the backflips and stuff, what I could do, and I think if they would have been happy, he would have had a long career in WCW, or even went probably in WWE then, who never knows. But that's long ago. I mean, like I said, I'm cool with Paul. I understand the business, so
yeah,
that's fine.
So just one more on that then. Did you guys, I remember we were on about, you don't really plan the matches, but you plan the finish. Did you have any discussion that day about what way it was going to go?
Well, it definitely went different than we had some stuff planned. But it's over 20 years ago, and it's just one. Actually, it's a very important moment or experience in my life, because after that I handled situation differently.
So you learned from it.
Yeah, so it was good for me. It made me even much more a pro wrestler.
Yeah. People have the perception that you two guys like hate each other, but I haven't talked to you both now. You're both.
No,
you're both
definitely no. It's
and
just wrestling. I mean, I had, he did, how would I say? It's like he said in his interview with you. It's not personal against me. It's against Ric Flair or the WCW office at that time. I understand that, so I'm really cool with that.
That's old news. But now we are going to talk about your pro wrestling school. You said that you're booked up till April next year.
Yeah.
Tell us about it. Where is it, and what do you offer to people?
Well, it's in south of Germany. It's in Bavaria, in the city of Nuremberg. And the most people I train in single session training, because my experience is that people in single session training the training is more efficient. They have much more better training results. Sure. They advance much faster, and I really can keep my eye on the individual needs of that student. Every student is different. So I do single session training. Of course, I do seminars for beginners. I do offer group training and stuff like that. But mostly I do single session training. And a lot of former students are established themselves internationally. Out of my school, they came a lot of champions. Yeah.
When your contract was, when you were in WCW and then WWE bought them, was there an opportunity for you to ever make that jump, or was that a discussion that was ever had about going to WWE?
Well, at first, when WCW was sold, I was just burned out, mentally and physically burned out. Yeah. I mean, I was, since I signed my contract there, I was straight with the company. I wrestled many years there, straight for them, and sometimes I had 350 days of traveling, sometimes 7 matches a day. So it was really tough on the body and on your mind, and especially at the end of the company where a lot of backstage politics were going on. It really was not a lot of fun. So since I didn't want to end up like some of my colleagues, like using certain substances or stuff like that, I said I need to take a break. I need to go back to my roots, go back to my family. And I just went back to Germany, and I never retired. I just said I need a break, And I took a while, and I was good at that time. And then WWE couldn't take my contract because I was directly signed by Time Warner.
Yeah.
We're just a few guys signed directly by Time Warner, and I was one of the guys, and I had a pretty good contract, and the offer which they gave boys for the contract, it wasn't that good in my eyes. So I said I'm gonna sit out that contract. Went back to Germany, and after that, WWE approached me twice and asked me if I want to come over, and both times it was too early for me, and I was very grateful, very honored, and I said, I'm thank you very much, but if I can't give 100% for the promotion and 100% for myself, and especially for the fans, 100%, I don't want to step in the ring. I just couldn't do it at that point in my life. I just needed to slow down. Plus, I wanted to have children and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to be 350 days on the road and don't see my child,
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, if you say twice no to WWE, they don't ask you again. But that was okay for me at that moment, because like I said, I was very honored. But if I know in the back of my mind I can't give 100%, I shouldn't do it, Then you wouldn't be happy. And everything I do in my life, I want to do it with the full passion I have.
Yeah.
So then I said, hey, listen, this sport gave me so much happiness in my life, and traveling around the world, seeing all those countries, meeting so many different people, cultures and stuff like that, and making good money, and becoming a little bit famous, So it was such a great time being a wrestler at that time. I wanted to give something back to the sport, and I wanted to make sure the sport in Germany and Europe exists in the future also. So I wanted to give professional training to people who are interested in that sport.
So you said that you're not officially retired. When did you have your last match?
My last match, not counting all the training matches I always do with my students. The last match was, I think, in 2004. Wow. 20 years.
Yeah. But why have you said then that you're not officially retired? Like, for example, let's just play devil's advocate. If WWE rang you in December and said, would you make an appearance in the Royal Rumble kind of as a special entrant, would you be open to do something like that? Third time lucky.
Especially, yeah, of course. Yeah. Why not? I still could go. I'm still young,
Are you holding out for one match in particular? Or have you got something in your mind that you're thinking about, or there's a reason why, like, if you haven't wrestled since 2004, but you're not retired, you got to have maybe something in your mind there that you're thinking?
Well, there's a few scenarios, but in general, just stepping back in the ring, it's, like I said, especially in the States, I had such good memories over there. That would be something special anyway for me. But even in Europe or stuff like that, I still love wrestling. Wrestling is in my blood. That's why I never retired. And I'm still at an age where I could go in the ring and perform and stuff like that,
Yeah.
So I don't want to put out any scenarios now, but
the door's open.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you wrestle Paul Roma again to fix the last match?
I would wrestle everybody. Probably wouldn't do all the same stuff what I used to do, but yeah, I would
Adapt the
wrestle.
style. Excellent, excellent. Look, man, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today, and really thank you for your time. I'll put all the links to your training school underneath the video, and I can only
Yes,
wish you
please do.
the best of luck in the future. And you never know where we might see you coming down the line.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you very much for having me. It was really fun. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too, man. Thank
Achtung,
you.
Achtung! Das ist Alex Wright!